Okay, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Data Platform Virtual Summit 2021. Let's move on. So we'll be talking about SQL Assessment, Microsoft's best practices checker. I'm not going to read the abstract. I'm sure you read the abstract and you thought of getting some useful information out of it. I'm sure that's why you are here. So let's move on. I also do not have any slides, just so you know. I'm using a tool called Azure Data Studio. If you are not aware of, this is a multi-platform, very lightweight tool based on extensions released by Microsoft. And I'm also using Notebook. So as I'm using Notebook, though this is not part of this talk, I'll still tell you a little bit so you don't feel like you're not familiar with, and I'm just bypassing that part. So Notebook is something you can write your code, you can write your comment, you can run your code, save your result, and send it to someone else, or you can keep it for yourself. And there are different kernels. There are T-SQL, PowerShell, and Custo, Spark, PySpark, Python, and all that. I'll be using PowerShell kernel today. And if you are new to this, once you install Azure Data Studio, which is a free tool, you can search and download from Microsoft's website. And then once you open a kernel and you want to use it, the tool will automatically download all the necessary modules for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So that's about the tool I'm going to be using. So, right now, there are other sessions going on, and you probably had if you're, in US, you probably had a whole day of work, and it's family time. So why would you be listening to me, right? So you have to have a good reason for that. If you're managing SQL Server, and if you're managing a large enterprise, meaning hundreds and thousands of servers, you always want to make sure that you are following the best practice, right? And checking all those servers one by one is probably not a practical idea, right? It's cumbersome. You cannot do it. Things will, go off your standard. And how do you know, right? So how do you keep these things in check and make sure you're following these best practices? So what Microsoft did is, based on Microsoft's experience for so many years and from the customer service team, oftentimes you will see that, there are blog posts, what should be a max memory setting, right? How many 10 DB files you should have in our environment. So there are different settings, and I agree, and I'm very aware that one size is not going to fit everyone, right? You might create a rule, but you might have a couple of environments that is not optimal for if you follow the standard rules or standard recommendations. So we'll talk about that also. So what finally Microsoft did is, they put all these rules, all these checkers. There are about 230 plus now. When I submitted the abstract, it was 202. And you can check against those with just a single command. And you can save that result, and you can see how many you are not complying with. And then you can make some improvement, maybe run it after a week, and then see, okay, I had X number of things who are not in compliance or not following the best practice. Now I have, X minus whatever percent, right? So you've made some improvement. Now I said, all these default rules might not work for you. So what can you do? You can modify these rules. You can put your custom thresholds. You can create your own rules. You can disable some of the rules, right? If you know that you're not, this doesn't apply to your environment, you can say, I do not want to check my environments against this rule, so I'm just going to disable it. You have those capability. Now, where can you do this? On-premises SQL Server 2012 and higher, SQL Server running on Azure virtual machines, which I'll show you today, the first two. And I'll also show the last one. I'm going to skip the two in the middle. One is the SQL Server running on Linux and managed instance, but both are doable because we have limited amount of time. That's why I'm just going to, but I'll give you enough resource where you can go and even explore further. So these are a couple of things we'll be demoing. I put enough resource for you, and these are already uploaded where the organizers gave me a OneDrive. So I created a folder with my name, all these files already uploaded, or you can go to my GitHub page and you can download anything you need. So these are already there. These are a bunch of resources. These are all clickable URL. You can go and, there's a video, there's pages from the product team who is actively writing the code for this product. And at the end, I put my contact, not to, because we have a finite amount of time. Maybe you will have a question that didn't get answered, or the way I answered it, you didn't like it. It was not a complete answer. Or you download a bunch of stuff, and then you're going to test with it, play with it, and practice, and then you ran into some issues that I didn't talk about. You can always reach out to me, and I'll guarantee that I'll always answer back to you. Maybe not right away, but within a few days. So that's about on this one. So I'm going to shut this. I'm going to leave it here. Let's start from the first one. So default rule set. So I just want to. I'm just going to take this. Okay. I just want to talk about, what are these rules that I'm talking about, right? So get some idea. So what I did in one of those resources that I showed you, there's a page in GitHub. You can download all these rules in CSV format or in JSON format. So, being a person that works better with T-SQL, for many years, I loaded those into a SQL Server table. And so I can do some aggregation, do some search, so I can show you. So let's look at this. And I loaded this into a SQL Server instance that's running on this laptop that I'm using for this presentation. It's running SQL Server 2019, and it's up to date with the latest CU patch level. So. And I should have probably mentioned, so I cannot see your questions, but the moderator can see it. So I think you have a chance to type it in the chat or somewhere, and then I think it will be relayed to me. So, and we'll have time at the end for Q&A, just so you know. So as you can see, I'm just doing a regular select count from this table. I loaded this here in a table. We have 232 rules. Let's just look at, randomly, just top 5, right? It's a random, there is no order. So there's an ID of each rule. You have a type, and there's an override type. And what is that? So sometimes, Microsoft will come up with a rule, say like in SQL Server 2012, and then they'll come up with a new recommendation starting in 2016, say. So that, they will have an override rule for the newer versions. Means if you're checking 2016 or more, use the override rule. If you're using an older version, use the base definition. This is enable, disable. There are labels, warnings. We'll look at different levels. They're critical. Right now, there's only 2. And then there's a display name. There's messages, what it does. And there's tags. Tags are very useful because I can say, like, as you can see here, there's a tag called trace flag, right? I can go and we'll look at this. I can go and say, run all the rules that has a tag with trace flag. So tags can be used in many different ways. There's, of course, description. And the good part is with each description, if it's not override, you have a URL that you can go to a Microsoft documentation and read more about it. And then we have target type, target platform, engine version, and all that, right? So let's go down, look at a little bit more. What are the target types? So we have database scope and we have server scope. So it's pretty much 2. The nulls you see, they're like override type and some other type of rules that's why you see those nulls. But I just did, just a distinct to show you. And then we're looking at the levels. As I said, there's only 2 critical. There's 33 information. There's mostly warnings. There's 197 warnings. And there are 58 is only for Windows, and there's 144 for Windows and Linux, right? So the one we're doing for Linux also works on Windows, but there are a couple of Windows one that doesn't work for Linux. And you can always, once you load it in a table, you can always, do search and say, give me the one only with Windows if you want to see what kind of rules are those. And then the engine edition, right? We have Express on premises, managed instance, and standard. So if you want to look at, what type is what, and how many implies to that, just a breakdown for you to look at. And there are engine versions. So right, the major versions 11, 12, 13. So if it was released in 11, you can run it for 12 and 13, but if it's only for 13, you cannot go back. It's obvious, but I still want to mention this. And then at the end, I said, what are some of my favorites, right? And it doesn't have to be your favorite, but I find this very useful. Some of this very practical. With all the the news that we see against breach and all that, there are a couple of fun ones, like weak password login equals password, and we'll see some of this. I'll try to demo you. TempDB files not same size, right? There's how many blog posts about this, what problem it can cause you. Latest CU, I think this is very useful for me. Recently, I have automated patches for SQL servers, but I didn't have that before. So latest CU, as you know, SQL Server 2016 Service Pack 3 actually just came out, I think, yesterday. So this is the last service pack that Microsoft will ever release, right? Going forward, 2017, 2019 is all CU, and they are more frequent, right? Now, if you have 1,000 servers, you want to make sure, right, that they're all latest CU, whoever is responsible, the process is working, something is not, falling through the crack. You can just run this one command against all your servers, and it's going to give you a list that these are not up to the latest CU, right? So it's pretty good. If you're doing upgrade or migrating to the cloud, right, you want to see the deprecated features. So there's a bunch of things that I find it, is very useful. So, and we'll look at some of this right now. So let's look at, I said, some of my favorite ones, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, why we need to import this module. And there are two PowerShell functions, but bear with me. There's another notebook. We'll go into a little bit more details. So I'm just, declaring a couple of variables, getting my instance, getting a database name. I put a SQL Assessment demo and a sample path for my customization scripts. So we do not have to run those every time. So, and this server instance is my local host. It's running a 2019 named instance. And I just want to see, what are the deprecated features that I carried over to my SQL 2019, right? So I can clean those out. So you get that. I'm not going to, look at the result set for each one. We don't have that much time. But I'm just trying to give you the concept how you can start using this tool. I'm sure once you start using, you should be able to read this and figure out, what you have to do. And also the goal of this session is not to how to mitigate some of this, right? Because each one can be a bigger topic, right? We can talk about TempDB, like SQL Nuggets, Twitter handle, Dipti, and there are other people, they have whole talk about TempDB. Monica and Brent Rose are, blogged about it, Paul Randall. So, I'm just trying to show you, how you can do these things. So just for that, for a demo purpose, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to make one of my TempDB file. I know they're all same size. I'm going to change it a little bit here. So I'm purposely making it, 10 megabyte. All my other ones are 8 meg. So, and see what kind of error message you get. Right, so we did this. So let's go back to this. And it tells you that all TempDB files are not the same size, right? Now, if we go back to that file and fix it, hopefully I don't get blocked, good. And we run this again. Right? There's nothing because we fixed it. So this is a quick one. I just want to show you. Login equals password, right? So this is something I don't do at my workplace, or but just to give you a demo, we'll be creating a login with the same password. And don't do this in your, in your systems, except you are testing this. But, if you have development machines that, that people have open access, you might want to check those things sometime, right? Or even in production, right? By chance, who knows? So now you can see that it even give you the login name, right? It's literally telling us it has a password, which is equals to the login, right? Not a good idea. So let's clean that up. I don't want to leave it there as a best practice. So check for duplicate index, right? So this is something that people always, battle with. Now I know people even, like I said, it can be a different discussion. People even have confusion about, duplicate indexes, right? The leading column matters. Yesterday there was a question in Twitter. Someone was confused because, the leading column was not same. They think it's the same index, but it's not. So, but again, it's for a different time. So we'll, I have all this, details where you get this copied from and all that. So I purposely created some duplicate indexes, just to see what kind of warning we get here, right? And you can see this, right? It says, give you the table name and your index name. Same unused index, check memory. You can, this is one of the things that you'll always see in different forums. When you open a case with Microsoft that, things are running slow, this is one of the things that people will ask you, right? That is your power planning scheme is set to, to the high performance, right? Because SQL Server is not something that you want to conserve energy on, because if you look at the price for enterprise core license, the amount of money you are paying and your electric bill or your cooling bill is really, a minor, a very small fraction of that, right? So you want to run it with a high performance, so your CPU cycles, you can get more CPU cycles in a second out of it, and you can run your things faster, right? So this is another command that, like I get a warning, right? Warning, switch server to high performance plan. And there is another, just a tidbit here. If you want to see what are the power plants available in your machine, this is this. You can make a list. And I think I can, I think this is the ID for the high performance, probably. Let me run this again. And this time I should not be getting a, yeah, so I switched it to high performance. Now I don't get that warning, right? And now if I run this, you will see that I also have a high performance plan. There's this star means, okay, this is the one that I have turned on right now. Okay, so hopefully, I'm going to ask the moderator. So this is a time I want to take a pause and maybe answer any question if there are, or they only can ask question at the end. I'm not sure. So, or I'll keep moving. So, okay. If any of you think that, you're not going to use this feature that I'm showing you right now, but you are still interested, you want to play with it a little bit. This is a notebook that I shared with all of you, and I just want to make it very clear that I did not write this from scratch. As you can see here, I copied it from this, and then I modify. I even didn't modify actually this one. This I didn't put in notes. This is exact copy from GitHub page. I'm not going to talk about this as a quick start. So there's only like 2 commands. You can read a little bit more, and there are some documents just to get quick start, because all the commands over there, I have it right here to talk about. So this is the main notebook that we'll probably spend most of the time that we have. So these are the, again, I copied this from here, and then I modified it. And then, I also, wrote some of my own stuff, but I want to make sure that I make it clear that I didn't write this from scratch. So you probably already noticed that we'll primarily be using invoke SQL Assessment. And there is another command called get SQL Assessment item. We'll be primarily using these 2 PowerShell commands. And to get these 2, you need the module called SQL Server, and the minimum version for that is right here. So you have to have minimum this version of the module to get those 2 commands. So let's load this. And now we can use those two commands, right? There's another warning I put here. If you see those errors, it is because your XP command shell configuration setting is turned off, which you should have turned off. I'm not advocating to turn this on, but you will see this error. Microsoft totally recognized that this is not the best way to run these two commands. So I did reach out to the product team, and this is the answer that I got. So they're aware, they're working on to get this through WMI and registry on the local and remote machines through .NET APIs. So very soon this will be resolved. I just want to make it clear. So the first one we are, we are getting, running those two commands. One is the get assessment item, one is this invoke SQL assessment, right? You always have to remember what scope you're running this. So right now here I'm saying get my SQL instance name from my local instance and invoke SQL assessment, right? So I'm passing this SQL instance here. So it is going to run in my server scope. So it will only run the rules that's applicable to a server scope, not at a database scope. And while that is running, I also put a bunch of options. I'm not going to run this, but some of you, you might be doing this in a different way. All these are correct, right? Someone might say, I'm just going to use GetItem. I'm just going to, I don't need to get the SQL instance. I can get the invoke SQL assessment and pass my SQL Server path. So that's also, valid. So you can do all this. So as you can see, it says target path, my server name, and then it gave us all the results. As I said before, I'm not going to, go through these outputs and tell you how to resolve this. We just don't have time for that. So there are 5 different options you can run that same command. Azure virtual machine. So what I did before all of you came online, I did spin up a virtual machine named DPS 2021, which also has a SQL Server instance running. I just took it from Marketplace. I didn't do anything just for this demo. And I admit that the way I'm connecting to it with the public IP address is not the right way to do it for your production server. Don't do it, because I'm sure your security team will not allow you to do this. I hope so. But I'm just trying to show that this command works against SQL Server running on Azure virtual machines, right? So we can run this. We use private endpoint at my workplace. And, of course, we don't expose any public IP address to the world for our VM. So again, there are a couple of warnings because I didn't start those services. I even didn't start the agent. I just deployed it from the marketplace and left it like that because my goal is just to show you that this thing works against the SQL Server running against VM. So you can do it that way. Now I showed you how to run this against a SQL Server. So I'm going to take the scope a little bit down, right? Because we all work with database, right? We just don't work at a server level. If there's no user database, it's probably a server is useless for us. So how do we do that, right? So here again, I'm taking this database variable and passing it to invoke SQL assessment. You can do it in many other ways, which I'll show you. Now I'm running this against just a single database. Just keep that in mind. I'm not running it against all the databases. And again, there's option 2, option 3, running the same command. If you're running it this way, absolutely fine. There's no harm. Now, you might say that, okay, Taiob, you're showing us how to run it against one database. I do not want to run this one by one. Fair enough, right? And I totally do that, agree with that. But I'm just showing you that in case if you have to run it against a single database. Again, there's a bunch of things that, some of this I did purposely for demos, some of this that I probably downloaded database from different sample websites and, from public spaces. So, they have some steps that we can fix, right? But you get the idea. Now, if you say, no, I do not want to run this against a single, I want to run it against all, this is what the command, and I'm not going to run it because it's just going to take some time because I have a Stack Overflow database, which is pretty big here. So this command gets SQL databases, gets SQL database, and I'm not filtering this with a name. So if I run this, this is going to run against all databases on my local instance. Now, sometimes I might not want to run the rules, right? I might want to see what rule applies to my resource. What do I mean by that? I mean, if I run this against my server instance that we've been working with, what are the rules that will get tested against or checked against, right? I just want to get the get SQL assessment item. It tells you if you hover on it, it just gives you the items, right? It doesn't do anything. It doesn't run the rules. So it gives me a list of rules with the ID that will run. I can also do that for a single database. If it's a master database, I can do that if it's a user database, and I can filter further. Here I was just saying get SQL assessment item. Here I'm saying, give me the item that the minimum severity is warning. Means filter out the information ones. I don't want to see those. Right? I can do that. And as you can see here, bunch of those. And if we say, can I just see the critical ones? Okay. There's only 2, and those might not be at a user database group scope, user database scope. They probably have a different scope, so we don't see anything, right? And I told you about tag, right? We talked about trace flag. Now, this is saying, can I see all the rules that applies at a server scope with a tag name trace flag? Again, I'm not running the rules. I just want to see it. So here's the list. All of this, as you can see, there are trace flags. So of course they have a tag with trace flag, right? Run a specific rule, right? Maybe I did a change. Maybe I'm not sure if someone changed something, right? I'm getting some weird things somewhere. I just want to run this one rule. So check if my XP command shell is on. That's all I want to run. And this is turned on. So it's literally telling me to disable it, right? So let's see if I have it's in my script probably. Yeah. Let's disable it and run that again. As you can see, no warning this time, right? Because now I disabled it. I'm going to turn it on. I don't know, down the road in a couple of my demos, I might need it. Some real estate here. Okay, good. I just want to check my backups. And we'll come back to this rule. We'll modify some of this and see. So it's saying, I need a full backup every 7 days, and these are missing. Now, so far what we've been doing, either we are running invoke SQL assessment or we are saying get SQL assessment item. Can I combine these two? Absolutely. Here I'm getting the item and I'm doing an invoke SQL assessment. Now there is a cool thing in PowerShell called outgrid view pass through. Google this if you don't know what it is. But I'll show you here. What this tells me is, these are all the items, right? Now I can choose, highlight these 3. I don't know, if you can see the color is very light, so you might not be able to, and I'm not sure, but I highlighted 3 things in blue. I said, okay, now it is going to run just those 3 rules, right? So I like this one if I have to do something ad hoc. Now, so far I've been showing you the results are coming on your screen. Might not be ideal for your environment, right? You might want to save those, analyze those later on. So there is a command, write SQL table data, and there's also something called flatten output, and I can give it a server name, database name, schema name, table name. And this time what it's going to do is going to run this, and it is going to save the result to this server database schema and table. I mean, the table belonging to that schema. right? And so far, I've been showing you how to run it against a single instance, and I'll also show you how you can run it against what I said at the beginning of this presentation. If you have hundreds or thousands of servers or databases, how you can automate this or how you can run it in one go, I'll show you that. So while this is running, what you can do, let's copy this and let's see if it really saved it in the table, right? This was my server name. Because this is on premises, you can use the use statement. If it was in cloud, you could not, right? So yeah, so my local time, as you can see in the corner, is 18:05. This is 9:16. So what it did, it saved everything to this table, right? And that's why it didn't output everything here, right? Which is probably, you're going to do if you're running this at an enterprise level. So we also talked about customization. So again, there are a couple of variables that I'm going to declare. And so I can, I don't have to type this over and over. I'm going to get the databases. Now I'm checking the full backups, right? It says that I do not have a full backup in last 7 days, which is not very good. Now, keep that in mind. We checked it for 7 days, right? And I have some customization files in this folder. We're going to use the folder path so we don't have to type the whole path every time. Now, I want to override this full backup, right? I want to say that my full backup, I want to check every 3 days. Why would I do that? I don't know, based on your environment. I'm just giving you an example. So I don't like that 7 that came with the Microsoft rules. I want to check it every 3 days. So we saw the customization file. Now I'm going to run this against that. Now you see it's checking against 3 days, right? What will happen if someone say, I'm happy with 7 days, but I'm not happy with 7 days for a single database. So what you can do, we can say, okay, all databases use the default rule that came from Microsoft, but for my Stack Overflow, I want it for 3 days, right? In that case, we use that file. And now you can see it has 7 days for all databases except for Stack Overflow. I have 3 days. I think I have a wrong database name. I was probably testing with something else, so I'll change that. So you can do that. If I go and change the max memory setting here, so I'm going to change it to 13,000. And now, oh, this is the override, sorry. I get a warning that I gave too much to SQL Server and there is less left for the operating system. But if I'm pretty confident that I'm not running anything else, I do not have like CLR code or other stuff, I want to really give to SQL Server a little bit more and it will work fine, I'm pretty sure. So I don't want to see this error message going forward. I can always go and I say I want to override it to 13,000, right? Because I know what I'm doing. And now, if I go and run this override rule, I don't get that error message anymore, right? So I think I don't remember what I had before, but I'm just going to run this for future demos. So that's another thing that you can, so I just showed you 2 examples, but you can do many more if you want to. How can you disable enable a rule, right? We talked about, so we saw customization, but I also talked about there are rules that I do not want to run at all because I know what I'm doing. So there are a couple of variables that I'm setting up. If I want to disable a single rule, I also have a JSON file that I can use with a disable TF634 .json. So what is that? How what is in that file? So let's take a look. I have ID and I'm overriding. I'm setting the enables to false, right? And to see this action, make sure you have the trace flag turned on to show this for the demo. So I'm turning on the trace flag 634. And because I disabled it, I don't get any warning message because it's disabled. But if I run the custom rule, the rule that I get from Microsoft, it will tell me that, I need to fix it. So let's clean some of this and then you can disable all trace flag. So this is an interesting one. I can say I do not want to check it. First I said disable all trace flags, and then I said enable only the one that has the performance tag, right? So I do not want to check against all trace flags, except if it's performance related, right? So you will see these are true, 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 because this prefetching, background column store compression, these are all related to performance, but it's false if it's not related to performance. So you can mix match, just so you know. You just have to write a little bit of JSON and save those. And there are a bunch of samples in the GitHub page. How can you write your own rules? So let's look at one, right? And there are a bunch of this. You can write it in command shell, in .NET. There are many different ways. So we'll just look at one with the T-SQL, right? So what it is doing here is pretty much selecting the space and checking there's a threshold 25. So it's saying all my database files needs to have 25% of free space. Am I advocating that? No, it's just for a demo purpose, right? Now, once we run this, it is telling me that one of my file only has 14% of free space, but the rule that I wrote, it is asking for 25%. And I can also customize or override the threshold of my own rules that I wrote, right? So this is my T-SQL probe. And if I want to override this, let's see, what is the file name I need? Custom threshold, custom rule threshold change. Okay, so we saw that there was a 14%, right? So now if I change this to 10%, so this is my rule ID, I'm overriding to 10%, right? Now, if I run it against this, you wouldn't see that alert that we saw for the other file, because now it's saying, I do not need 25%, I only need 10% of free space. So I'm not going to go through the other rules that you can write, but please go through this. There is one to check any files in your disks that's over in X megabytes or whatever you want to do. And there are some URLs here. So I'm going to stop this one here. And let's see what we have. Okay, so this one is a central management server. So we talked about, a few times, right? This is not ideal to run for one database or one server, right? Most of us doesn't work with just a single server or single database. Probably have hundreds and thousands. So if you haven't heard of DBA Tools function, I made it a clickable, link. Read about this and use those. Very, it will make your life a lot easier if you're working with databases, and it's free, especially if you're doing migration. I don't do it without DBA Tools. So there's a command in DBA Tools called get DBA registered server. If you are not familiar with what is called CMS, it's called Central Management Server. You can register all your server, and then you can run commands, and you can do other stuff with that. You can group and all that. I'm not going to get there. But in combination with that command and invoke SQL Assessment, now I can run this against as many servers as I want, as many databases I want. Now, if some of you say, I do not want a CMS, yes, if you have a database that you probably call DBA database or whatever, if you have all your servers listed, you can pass a CSV. You can pass pretty much anything, right? You just have to grab the name. You can do it in many different ways. Just look up examples, then you can pass, use the for each, and then you can roll through this. So, and I also put a note, you can expand this to move these results to a table first, right? You can write this to a table as I showed here, then you can archive this, older than 6 months, go to archive table, you can compress those, or you can purge it. And from there, if some of you are, into SSRS or Power BI, you might want to do some fancy reporting, create a dashboard and share it with your boss, right? So he or she can go and see, hey, the team is working, right? We had few thousand not compliant best checker, and slowly they're taking it down, right? You can get some credit out of it. So that's one thing. And the last thing, okay, let me take a pause. So I'm just going to ask the moderator if, I know we are into the Q&A time, but if there is not enough question, I want to show one more thing, but I will give preference to the question because the last 15 minutes are supposed to be reserved for question and answer. I do not see anything. I know I'm not supposed to see it in the chat. Okay. Okay, so I'm not hearing back from the moderator, so I'm going to keep talking. Hopefully the moderator will come back if there are questions. So whatever I showed you so far, some of you might say, I just want to test this out. I do not want to write all this in a PowerShell, T-SQL. You are in luck. So as I said at the beginning, Azure Data Studio has something called extensions. So, and this is very lightweight tool. You enable or you load extensions and you disable extensions if you don't need, right? That's how you keep it light. You only get the stuff that you need, use it. If you don't need it further, disable it, keep it light. So there is an extension called SQL Assessment. Still in preview, and it's by Microsoft because extensions can be, you can write extensions And you can ask people to use it. Or there are other third-party companies like Redgate, SQL Sentry, which is part of SolarWinds now. They have their own extensions for their own tools. So you can use this. So let's look at this. Let me close this. So if I connect to my SQL Server 2019, and I'm just going to reduce this, you see something called SQL Assessment here on the homepage, right? And there are other stuff, SQL Agent is extension. Most of this stuff you are seeing is through extension because, as I said, it's very lightweight. They want to keep it that way. Unless you want something else, they don't, put it in the core product. So let's click SQL Assessment. And now reduce it a little bit. And I can just say from here that I want to run assessment against this server. Now, you lose a little bit of control. And what do I mean by that, right? I showed you before that I can choose my scope and I can run the assessment based on the scope that I choose. Here, I did not have that choice. I just clicked. So it is going to run against server and all of my user databases in that server. So I think it's fair enough, right? Because I'm being a little bit lazy here. I do not have to write anything. I don't have to do anything, just a few clicks. So it's not fair for people there writing code, right? So you lose some control. I think not a big deal. But if someone want to get started, this is a good place. Now, there's some built-in cool things. As you can see, this is my server. Now, these are the databases. Right? As it does more databases, it's going to populate that list. Now, once this is all done and I want to filter, I can click here and it will filter it. So there are a couple of places I can do filters, right? We saw one is the target. I can do on the severity. And there are a couple of things on this side you can filter your results set. Once this is done, there are a couple of other bells and whistles that comes with it. You can see view applicable roles. So you remember we had two PowerShell commands. One is to run it. Other one was for seeing what are the rules that apply, right? So we can see that. And here one good part is as you click this, each one has more details about that. And some of these you will see like a URL that you can click to learn more, right? To take you to Microsoft documentation. So it's probably done. Yeah. Now you see like all these, right? We can choose. I can also see the rules that are applicable. And then hopefully it doesn't do it again. Oh, no, I didn't. Yes, I shouldn't have done that. So now it's going to run again. Let me see if I can trick this. I cannot. Okay, so I shouldn't have shown this before. I wanted to show you these two features. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I still cannot get this to lit up. So once this to lit up, I'll show you. Okay. So because you are using the GUI here, and we decided that we don't want to write any code. Once you hit this, it's going to give you a full T-SQL with the table statement and its start statement. That means how you can save all this to a table, right? You get this automatic. Other thing I like here is there's something called create HTML report. And if we save it, it's very fancy, right? I don't consult, but if you're a consultant, you go to a new place, they give you a bunch of servers. Within a couple of minutes, you can run this, give them a fancy HTML report, right? And tell them, hey, these are the things that you want to fix. Or not compliant, not necessarily they have to fix everything depending on, their environment. So that's all I have. And I'm going to show you my contacts And I'll leave this remaining 6 minutes for question and answer. I'm still a little bit confused about how I'm going to get to the answer questions.